Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Steampunk Desperado channel, and happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween.
As we record this, it is just almost Halloween. In celebration, I have Mrs. Desperado with me, and we are going to talk about that horror classic, Dracula. Of course, yes. And in preparation, we reread the novel, it's pretty awesome.
It's very, very good. Stands the test of time.
You know, you forget how good it is if you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it in a long time. Now, the novel Dracula was written by Bram Stoker in 1897.
47.
1897? No. Bram Stoker was born in 1847. Yes.
I apologize.
So way long time ago.
1897. He's always right.
Yes, and so he wrote a lot of books, but this is the only one everybody remembers. And he was an Irish writer, and very successful in that sense. And so it's been adapted ever since. They did stage plays, and when the movies came around in the 1920s, they started making movies. And so we watched movie adaptations. We watched 10 different adaptations of Dracula, plus several of the other like satires and spin-offs over a stretch of 100 years, starting with Nosferatu in 1922.
Crazy.
And the most recent one being The Last Voyage of the Demeter, 2023, and which is just about a part of the book. Now, I want to go over the book a little bit, just because people might not have read it or might not remember. And so it's a 3-part story, and it's all told as letters, like letters or diary entries or whatever, which is a common thing they did that in those days. And the first part is where attorney Jonathan Harker, he travels from England to Transylvania to visit Count Dracula, who is going to buy property. He's a wealthy nobleman who's going to buy property in England. And so his agency wants to help him out. And Dracula ends up holding him prisoner in there, and he eventually escapes. Part 2 is when Dracula has arrived in England, and Harker got back as well. And
he's kind of crazy.
He's kind of been affected
a little PTSD
by the experience, including with 3 vampire women, Dracula's wives or whatever they are. And so in this part, he's in England and he's causing havoc. He's trying to vampirize. There's Harker's fiancée Mina and her best friend Lucy. She's the one he seduces first. And so there's a mental institution involved where this crazy guy is Renfield is eating flies, but he
wants lives.
Yes, he can hear Dracula's thoughts, and so he's Dracula's follower. And so that part, and then Van Helsing gets called in to solve the problem of why is Lucy sick? Why isn't she recovering? And then there's part 3 where they realize what he is, and he's fled back to Transylvania. And Harker and Van Helsing and their friends pursue him for a final showdown. So 3 parts. Most movies don't have all 3. Some parts only have part 2, some of them, some adaptations. And a lot of them leave out part 3. Probably it gets a little long, but it's unfortunate because, it's the story. That's the way it was. And so there's a zillion vampire movies, but we mainly tried to watch the ones that were actually adaptations of the story of Dracula. And so you didn't have really a favorite, did you?
I didn't. Now, I liked the Demeter. I felt that it went back to its original roots as Dracula, as a monster.
Yeah, the really monstrous, scary Dracula.
Max Schreck was in that. He was very creepy.
Well, in the original, 1922.
Yes, not Demeter.
Yes.
In the Demeter, it goes back to him being a monster, and it's really just the voyage. I apologize.
Yeah.
The voyage from Transylvania
Yes.
to England. So it's about that story. It's encapsulated.
Which is like one chapter of the actual book.
Right. And very, I liked it. I loved the everything about
A lot
it.
of suspense.
Yes, very suspenseful.
Yes.
There were some things that I wasn't really crazy about, some of the casting and some of the other parts, but you know what? We come to see the monster, don't we?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I liked it. I liked the ending. I liked that one, but I wouldn't call it my favorite because it didn't follow the book.
But you kind of like Nosferatu too, right? The original.
I did like the original.
The silent movie.
Mm-hmm.
You can find it online, and it's a silent movie. They have the placards and all that stuff.
And wasn't there a lawsuit about that?
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is because they tried to pretend that they hadn't ripped off Dracula, and that's why they renamed him. But essentially, Bram Stoker's estate sued them and said, "Yeah, this is the Dracula story," and they lost, so they had to pay royalties to his estate, which is only fair. It really is the Dracula story for all intents and purposes. And so, but it's a good adaptation. I mean, Dracula is kind of a horrifying, bald guy with a flat nose, and he looks very bat-like.
Yeah. And what was your favorite?
Well, I had two favorites. My first was the Bela Lugosi 1931, and that's the classic. That's what everybody thinks of when they think of Dracula. They think of Bela Lugosi in the black suit with the red cummerbund. He's very noble. He's very elegant, but he's creepy too.
Mm-hmm.
He is creepy, and he's not like the sexy Dracula who in the later, like the late 50s, they started to get into that. But I liked a couple things about that were really good. One is the line when Harker's there at the castle and he's giving him food and wine, and Harker says, "Aren't you going to join me?" And he says, "No, I do not drink wine," which is my favorite line. And then they had these effects. They wanted to make the castle creepy, so they had live animals, and they had an armadillo among them. And I was like, "What the heck is an armadillo? Are they even native to Transylvania?"
No, but
I doubt it.
I just think it was a creepy animal that the director's mother probably saw and went, "Ooh, that's awful." He's like, "Oh, I'm going to put it in the movie."
So we're from the Southwest, and when we think of armadillos, are these dumb things that get hit in the road, you know? and so it's pretty funny. But it was classic. Now, my other favorite, 1992, Bram Stoker's Dracula. See, so they're claiming to be accurate. And starring the world's greatest living actor, Gary Oldman. I'm sorry, I'm a huge Gary Oldman fanboy. Everything he's in is brilliant and genius, whether it's The Fifth Element or he was in the Batman movies. I mean, just freaking genius. And the costumes were very steampunk. They were very elegant. And I loved Dracula's look and their little glasses, really the direction. And Winona Ryder, who's very cute, as Mina, the fiance, Harker's fiance. And also, favorite line in that one was, Dracula has taken Mina out for drinks, which he didn't do in the novel. And they're having absinthe, which was very popular in the day. And it's green, and he says, "The green fairy wants your soul, but I will protect you." So, if you're into Victorian culture at all, you'd understand the reference. It's great. And so, anyway, those were my two favorite. And a lot of them were so silly, they were funny in a lot of places, even the ones that weren't supposed to be funny. For example, there was a 73 one, Christopher Lee. Well, Christopher Lee was probably the most accomplished Dracula because he played him for the first time in 58. Then there was a bunch of sequels. And then he played him again in 73, I think it was the last time. And that's hailed as one of the most accurate, but not really. Yeah. I mean, at least I think they had some of part 3 in there where he actually did go back to the castle, yes. Right? Yeah, they did. But they had the hilarious blood spatter in there. Like they're staking one of Dracula's wives, one of those 3 women that live with him, and it just got splatters all over Parker, or whoever it was.
Right up his face.
Yeah.
And the wife, you don't see her because again, you're talking about this time that they didn't show they didn't show the violence
It
on
was
screen.
hard to do like
Yeah.
graphic
So,
effects.
but she goes, ugh.
and the night scenes were all like broad daylight. Can't you use a filter on that? You know, you would think, oh geez.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't seem. Why is he out in the daytime?
That's not going to work. But anyway, so it's funny because some of these stories they change it. Like they have Dracula dying in England. In one, he actually kind of turns into a bat and flies away.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't remember which one that was.
With spooky, creepy music.
As he and that was so strange. But anyway, gotta give a few shout outs. Jack Palance played him in 1974. He was like a rugged Dracula because you used to seeing him as a gunfighter in westerns, and he actually did a pretty good job.
He was like the brawny man.
Yeah, exactly. And there was another one that we loved. We found it online on YouTube, and it was like an animated short film for 2022 by Abby Sulfa Pictures Animation. I hadn't heard of them before, but it was really good. There was little computer type, 3D type CGI, and they did a really good job with the part 1 and I think the beginning of part 2 of the novel. And that was part 1 of their animation. So we were looking forward to the second. We found the second, and they introduced Sherlock Holmes.
Yes, they put Sherlock Holmes in it.
That's cool. I mean, as a steampunk, I love that kind of thing, except I wanted to see them finish the story in the proper way. And then maybe you can introduce Sherlock Holmes. You can do an alternate version. But, whatever. And I also...
The worst.
Yeah. Also gotta give a jeer, a thumbs down to the very worst, one of the worst things I've ever seen that wasn't like done by a child.
It would have been better.
Yeah, because then you would have said, very good, Johnny. No, this was the BBC's 2020 miniseries. And there was 3 parts. We only watched the first because it was so bad. It starts when Jonathan Harker is in a nunnery recovering from his escape from the castle. Now, this is part of the book, but in this case, they make it a whole couple hours. And the nun that's in charge of him is Van Helsing's daughter. Like, what?
Yeah.
And like she's a nun and she's saying,
God,
she's a bad nun. She's saying, God doesn't care about you. Yeah. What? You're a nun?
Yeah.
And then she's asking Harker about having gay sex with Dracula. Like, what? Where did this come from? And then Dracula shows up at the nunnery, which he does not naked, which he did not do in the book. No. And he's trying to talk these nuns into inviting him in, well, so he can, butcher them all. But a naked Dracula? Ladies, let me in, ladies. Like, what the heck?
It didn't work.
As a comedy. It wasn't even good comedy because it wasn't funny enough. It was
absurd, yeah.
Yeah, so gotta give a thumbs down to that one. But it's funny because so many of them, they have to take shortcuts because it's a long story. So they'll change things around, like Carfax Abbey, which is the place that Dracula buys.
Right.
So they'll put it right next to the asylum where Renfield is at. Or they'll have Mina will be the daughter of the asylum director. Or they change all this stuff around. So that it's easier. Van Helsing will be there from the start sometimes. They don't have to call him in from Amsterdam. And sometimes Dracula dies in London, so we don't have to go back to Transylvania. And at other times, one movie even switched Mina and Lucy.
Yes, and had Lucy.
I don't understand it. Like, why would you switch Mina and Lucy? There's no reason for it.
I don't.
Because Lucy's kind of the sassy one, she's kind of so it makes sense that she's the one that succumbs to Dracula's charms, and whereas Mina is she's the solid good girl. She's Harker's fiancée.
That's true with any 2 girlfriends.
Yes,
one gets you into trouble and one gets you out of it.
Exactly. So that's very true to life in that sense. So it was interesting, but
there's a new one coming out.
Yes.
In December of this year, 2024. So look that up. I'm not even really sure who's in it because I didn't do my homework.
That's at Christmas, which is the perfect time for a vampire movie, right?
Nightmare Before Christmas, right? Your
Yes,
favorite,
right. It was my favorite.
So, but I would think of all of these, and we did watch quite a bit, and it was fun to watch, just like we had done before with Christmas Carol.
Yes,
it's fun to see all these adaptations, and even though it gets kind of crazy after about 9 or 10, you're like, okay,
this is
play.
like they switch everything around, just like they would switch the ghosts around.
Exactly. But I actually liked Dracula Dead and Loving It.
It is pretty funny.
Mel Brooks.
Brooks is classic.
And the part where, the splatter of blood, so you could tell that Mel Brooks watched all these as well. He's drenched in blood instead. And it is hilarious. It's very funny. And
where do we watch that? I haven't seen it for a long time.
Oh, it's so funny. I like that one. And then as an honorable mention, What We Do in the Shadows, which is not the Dracula tale. It's a mockumentary about some vampires who are living together
in New Zealand. And then it's Taika Waititi and Jermaine Clement, those guys from the comedy duo. And
very funny.
It is extremely funny. And they have one vampire who is very much like Nosferatu
he looks
in
just
there.
Like him. Yes, I think his name is Brian.
Or something like that. That makes sense, right?
It's hilarious.
Stop eating the guests, Brian.
Exactly. And then the other one I wanted to mention was Shadow of a Vampire. Again, not the story. Yes. Not the original story. However, this one had
Willem Dafoe is in it.
As the Dracula. So it is a movie about making a movie.
It's a meta movie.
A meta movie about Dracula, and then but the director the director in the movie,
right?
Actually hires a real vampire.
Which Max Schreck is a real vampire in this story.
Yes, and he keeps eating the crew. So it's very funny. It's a very dark, dark comedy, but I liked that one. My other honorable mention would be the best guest appearance of Nosferatu, and that is in SpongeBob's episode, The Hash Slinging Slasher.
Well, that is my favorite SpongeBob episode too.
The Hash Slinging Slasher.
Because he's so excited to be working all night.
At night.
Yes.
So toward the end of the episode, they can't figure out who this Hash Slinging Slasher is, and the lights keep going off and on, and they go over there, and it's like the original Nosferatu, and he's flicking the lights.
See, Nosferatu is pranking them.
He's pranking them, and they go Nosferatu. So very cute. Now even the kids can be horrified by
even they can know who Nosferatu was. And so that's very cool.
So love the book, but none of the adaptations spoke to me.
Yeah, I would recommend basically the Bela Lugosi from 1931 and the Gary Oldman, best actor in the world, from 1992. And so this has been our show on the novel Dracula by Bram Stoker and the various movie adaptations. Just watched some of the very, very, very many, and not very impressed by most of them, I'm afraid. Please let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you have a favorite Dracula or a comment on particular aspect of the adaptations, we'd really appreciate it. Please also like and subscribe. Also check out our books on Amazon. As always, I will have the link in the description below. For now, this is Steampunk Desperado and Mrs. Desperado saying adios amigos and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
From the Steampunk Desperado channel.